How do you pronounce this word? If you said colonel, you're wrong. It's colonel. A word spelled with no R, no K, and no second syllable that is somehow pronounced colonel. And if that feels insane to you, good, because it is. But it's not random. There's a reason. There's always a reason. Or this one. Most people say Wednesday. The word is spelled with a D, an N, an E, and an S that all apparently decided to retire early. Or February. A word almost everyone pronounces February because the first R is essentially invisible. Or salmon, silent L, no explanation offered. Here's the thing. If you've been mispronouncing these words, you're not bad at English. You've been a victim of one of the strangest quirks in the history of any language on the earth. The fact that English spelling and English pronunciation got completely divorced from each other centuries ago, and nobody ever fixed it. Welcome to the Airlearn Language Show. If by the end of this you want to learn a language that actually spells things the way they sound, Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, they're all on Airlearn. Check it out. To understand why English is spelled the way it is, you need to understand one fundamental thing. English spelling was frozen in time, and pronunciation wasn't. In the early 15th century, the printing press arrived in England. Before that, scribes copied texts by hand, and spelling was loose. A word might be spelled 3 different ways in the same manuscript, and nobody cared much. But printing required consistency. Typesetters needed to spell words the same way, every time. So spelling got standardized, largely based on how words were pronounced in the early 1400s. Then, pronunciation kept changing, dramatically. Between roughly 1400 and 1700, English went through what linguists call the Great Vowel Shift, one of the most radical and rapid changes in the sound of any major language ever recorded. Every long vowel in English shifted. Words that had been pronounced one way for centuries started being pronounced completely differently. But the spelling, frozen by the printing press, didn't move with it. The result is a language where the spelling is a photograph of how English sounded 600 years ago, and the pronunciation is what happened after the photograph was taken. Every mispronounced word, every silent letter, every vowel that doesn't do what it looks like it should do, it's a fossil, a record of a sound that used to exist and doesn't anymore. But that's only part of the story, because English didn't just change on its own. It got invaded. In 1066, William the Conqueror invaded England, and the Norman French became the ruling class. For the next 3 centuries, England was effectively a bilingual country. French for the court, the law, and the educated class, Old English for everyone else. When those 2 languages slowly merged into what we now call Middle English, English absorbed thousands of French words. But it absorbed them with their French spellings, and French spelling logic is not English spelling logic. Colonel is the perfect example. The word came from French, which got it from Italian colonnello, a little column referring to the column of soldiers a colonel commanded. When English borrowed it from French, there were actually 2 competing spellings, one with an R and one with an L. The R spelling, pronounced colonel, won out in speech. The one with the L spelling won out in writing. And English, being English, decided to keep both, the French spelling and the Italian-influenced pronunciation, and simply never reconciled them. So you get a word spelling like this, pronounced like this. 2 different historical versions of the same word, fossilized in one impossible combination. This pattern of French spelling, shifted pronunciation explains dozens of English's most notorious mismatches. Wednesday is a different kind of problem. This one isn't French, it's Old English, and it's a fossil of a religion. Wednesday comes from Woden's Day, named after Woden, the chief god of the Anglo-Saxon pantheon, the same god the Norse called Odin. Over centuries, Woden's Day compressed and shifted. Woden's Day, Wednesdia, Wednesday. The pronunciation kept compressing. The spelling stopped compressing somewhere in the middle. The D and the N in Wednesday are not mistakes. They were once pronounced. Wednesday. 3 distinct syllables, fully articulated. But in natural speech, sounds that are awkward to say next to each other get dropped. The D became silent because wedness is genuinely hard to say quickly, so speakers started skipping it. The spelling never caught up. The same thing happened with nearly every day of the week. Thursday is Thursday. Friday is Frig's Day, Frigg being Odin's wife. English days of the week are a museum of Anglo-Saxon religion that almost nobody converted away from, even after Christianity arrived. The name stayed. The gods they referred to were forgotten. The spellings preserved sounds that mouths eventually stopped making. Once you understand the Great Vowel Shift and the Norman Invasion, silent letters stop being mysterious. They're just sounds that used to be pronounced and aren't anymore. The K in night, knife, no, kneel, all of those were once pronounced. A medieval English speaker once said every letter. Knight, knife. The k sound before N gradually disappeared from spoken English between the 16th and 17th centuries. The spelling didn't notice. The W in right, wrong, rap, wrist. Same story. Once pronounced, now silent. You can still hear the ghost in its related languages. The German word for wrong still pronounces that initial consonant cluster. The L in salmon, calm, palm, walk, talk. This one came from a different direction. Many of these words were respelled during the Renaissance by scholars who wanted English to look more Latin, the prestige language of learning. Salmon in Old French was salmon, Noel. But Renaissance scholars knew it came from the Latin salmo, so they added back the L to make etymology visible. The L went into the spelling. It never went into the pronunciation. This is a particularly English problem. English has been inferred with by well-meaning scholars for centuries, all of them adding silent letters to make the language look more learned, more classical, more connected to its roots. The result is a spelling system that is partly phonetic, partly etymological, partly historical, and partly just a record of somebody's opinion in 1550 about what Latin the word came from. Here's one more layer to this, and it's specifically human. When William Caxton set up the first English printing press in 1476, he employed typesetters, many of them from the Netherlands. These were skilled craftsmen, but they were not native English speakers. They made spelling decisions based on what looked right to them, occasionally based on Dutch spelling conventions, occasionally based on what filling a line of type more neatly. Some English spellings exist because a Dutch typesetter made a judgment call in 1480 and it stuck. The word ghost has a GH spelling because Caxton's Flemish typesetters were used to spelling similar sounds that way in their own language. English had GOST before the printing press. The H arrived with the Dutch and never left. This is the thing that makes English spelling genuinely unique. It wasn't designed. It accumulated. Every historical layer, Old English, Norse, Norman French, Latin, scholarship, Dutch typesetters, the Great Vowel Shift, left its mark, and nothing was ever cleaned up. Other languages went through spelling reforms. The French did it. The Germans did it. The Spanish did it. English never did. The fossils just kept piling up. Here's the modern version of the same problem. Quinoa, spelled like this. Most English speakers encountering it for the first time in writing say quinoa. The actual pronunciation is quinoa, a Quechua word from the Andes, borrowed into Spanish, borrowed into English with a spelling that follows Spanish conventions that English speakers have no reason to know. As English continues to absorb words from every language on earth, which it does, constantly, aggressively, it keeps importing new spelling systems along with the words. Every loan word is a fresh opportunity for spelling and pronunciation to diverge. Entrepreneur, rendezvous, genre, debris, all French, all pronounced in ways that make no sense if you're reading them as English. English isn't done accumulating fossils. It's making new ones right now. Every mispronounced word in English is crime scene. And once you know what to look for, you can read it. Silent K? That's a medieval sound that mouths stopped making. Unexpected pronunciation? That's two different historical spellings that got merged. A letter that doesn't belong. That's a Renaissance scholar adding it to make the word look more Latin. English spelling isn't bad design. It's no design at all. It's 6 centuries of history piled on top of each other. Norse gods, French invasions, Dutch typesetters, Latin scholars, and a vowel shift that rewired the entire sound of the language while the printing press held the spelling in place. You haven't been mispronouncing English because you're careless. You've been mispronouncing it because the language is full of traps that were sent centuries before you arrived. Every word you've ever mispronounced has a reason, and the reason is always history. This is true for English. It's true for every language. Once you start pulling that thread, it doesn't stop. And if this made you want to actually learn one, Airlearn can help with that. Links in the description. See you in the next one.